Welcome to Time Team News, your monthly look at archaeological news and discoveries from Britain and across the globe. Now, if you enjoy this show, please do subscribe to make sure that you catch every episode. Now, Rome wasn't built in a day, but recent excavations have revealed how one of Roman Britain's major towns was built. Back in Series 7, Time Team visited Cirencester and uncovered a beautifully preserved Roman mosaic in the back garden of a family's terraced house. In recent years, archaeologists have been investigating an industrial site at nearby Minety in Wiltshire that's been yielding an array of fired Roman tiles. Today it might look like any other field, but 2,000 years ago it was a major industrial hub manufacturing tiles that were used to build Corinium or modern-day Cirencester. The excavation has been led by Cotswold Archaeology, including old Time Team friend Neil Holbrook. We visited the site to find out more.
Well, we're here in Minety, a tiny little village on the Wiltshire-Gloucestershire border, about 6 miles south of Cirencester. I'd always remember from when I first came to the West Country 30 years ago, that it's always said that Minety was the source of all the Roman tiles used to build the Roman town of Cirencester. You know, a big town, second largest town of Roman Britain. And, you know, my hopes were modest at the start. I hoped that maybe we could find a tile kiln, and maybe we might even find some stamped tiles. And these stamped tiles are something which Minety is known for. Within the first 3 hours of the dig, they come down onto the top of the tile kiln and have produced 3 bits of stamped tile. So my hopes had been answered on day one, morning one. And from there, it's just grown and grown and grown. So what we've now discovered is a really impressive Roman tile kiln, over 100 stamped tiles, and got an amazing story about how this little locality, which now sits in the middle of a field in North Wiltshire, in fact was a locality where they produced Roman building materials that stretched for 50 or more miles in all directions.
At this end we've got roof tiles, and roof tiles are these ones, and this one is quite heavy. That's tegular, and that's the sort of standard size. This is an imbrex, which is the bit that covers the gaps on the tegulae as they go up the roof. We've got 5 different sets of stamps that start TPF. So we've got TPF on its own, TPF-A, TPF-B, TPF-C and TPF-P. TPF probably stands for Tegularia Publicae Fecerunt, so made in the public tile works. Made in the public tile works of Cirencester, Roman Corinium. If that is right, then this would have been the municipal tile works for the town council, and A, B, C and P would have represented different contractors running the kiln on behalf of the council. And that's, is quite a remarkable sort of find. It parallels a similar sort of situation we found in Gloucester, where they have tiles that's stamped RPG for Res Publicae Gleventium, so Town Council of Gloucester. All of the TPF stamps are basically found in Cirencester, which reinforces the fact that this is the public tile works for Cirencester.
Working on the kiln has been a great opportunity to see some real sort of meaty archaeology, really. It's not just sort of vague sort of smudges in the ground, which is a lot of things we work on. It's really nice to be able to see some archaeology and actually really understand how it worked and exactly what it is when you first look at it.
So this is the latest kiln on the Minety Brandius farm site, and as you can see we have the central flue, which is surviving really well here, almost 5 metres in length going down to here. And then we have a central drain, all stamped with the TPF-P stamps on it. And that comes out and that funnels into a massive series of drains here. You can see the lovely box flue drain down here, and then a central culvert as well. And then out the front here, we we have this line of tiles which we believe was a barrow run. So when they were raking out the flue at the end of the process, they were using that to take all the material away to the waste pit over the far side.
And what's been great is that this is a chance for the professional archaeologists from Cotswold Archaeology to work with local volunteers.
It's great to get people who this is their local heritage on site, and also they're, particularly well, with all of them, to teach them skills, what archaeologists actually do, what it takes to go from knowing that there's a site there to actually being able to tell a story about the past. It's brilliant that there's a kiln here, but what does that mean about the people who were using it? What was their day-to-day like? What was their life like? It's that story that I'm interested in, yeah.
And coming soon over on Patreon, an exclusive interview with Neil Holbrook, reliving some of his favourite Time Team moments over the years. Now, Stonehenge, a site that continues to reveal new secrets with each passing year. Now, it's long been known that the smaller blue stones on the outer circle of Stonehenge travelled many miles from the Preseli Mountains in Wales. Now, new research confirms that the altar stone travelled from much further afield, most likely Scotland. Geological analysis of the stone's fabric shows it couldn't have come from England or Wales, and that it likely stems from a geology known as the Old Red Sandstone in the Orcadian Basin, a formation that stretches across northeast Scotland into the Orkney Isles. The process works by matching the unique geological fingerprint to a specific rock formation found in a particular area. It's a process of elimination, and determining where it definitely could not have come from is just as important when narrowing down the search. Weighing over 6 tonnes, the megalith was probably transported by boat. The new study was published in the journal Nature, and we've put the link in the description box below. You've probably seen those videos online of dancing robots performing backflips and other stunts, but robots have all manner of applications in the real world, and they're now being put to use in cultural heritage. In fact, Forestry England and University College London have deployed a robo-dog to digitally map historic mine shafts in the Forest of Dean, Gloucestershire. And who would be at the forefront of all this other than Time Team's very own Lawrence Shaw? Let's find out what he's been up to.
With regards to what we're doing today, I specialise in landscape survey, so I learn about GPSs and LiDAR and lasers and mapping things, but above ground. I think the trickiest things we have to deal with are trees. But we're looking at the possibilities of using these robotic dogs to sort of inform the mapping of mines in the future, and this is just the first step. But I wonder what your take on that is in terms of bringing in robots to help with quite a cultural heritage-y themed discipline.
I'm quite enthusiastic about it, really, because my own background is in mechatronics, and I was actually an electromechanical design engineer for most of my life. So there is a use to this. I'm not opposed to using modern technology, provided it can work along with us and not instead of us.
I think that's such a nice way of putting it, and rather coincidentally, the robotic dog has just arrived.
So we better go and see what it's about then, hadn't we? Yeah, well, off we go.
Demetrius, this is a beautiful thing that we've got in front of us. There's so much technology going on, and I'm assuming this is the LiDAR pod at the front.
This is one of the leaders that we use for getting a representation of the environment.
Is that a Connect from an Xbox?
Yes.
Okay, so
exactly.
what's that doing?
So this is a different type of sensor. It's like a camera. It gives a different perspective of the environment to the robot.
So we're using photo 3D imagery.
Exactly.
We've got 3D point clouds.
Exactly.
You've got 2 absolutely stonking lights on the front there,
Yes.
which are going to be really important. But what's
That's
this one
another
there?
leader.
Oh, so that's
sensor.
another LiDAR sensor,
It's another
okay.
LiDAR.
So you're trialling effectively 3 different mapping techniques while we're down there.
Exactly.
We've just been down the bottom of the mine. You've for the first time you've sort of got an idea of the terrain and the sort of the confined space that you're going to be working in. What's your initial...
it's a very difficult space, even for humans, I think.
Yes.
I think we struggled ourselves It's very challenging. I think I like it. 1, 2, 3. It's not just where humans cannot go, it's where it's dangerous to go. So this can adapt really nice in any environment without the need to open a road, you know, or a path even. Like a wild animal, it can just go. Exactly.
What's really exciting about what's going on here today is whilst it's a tiny step forward, we don't know what the results are going to be. It's one single case study, but the technology that the UCL team have got on that robot and the functionality of it to get into spaces where humans may not fit or it may not be safe, this has the potential to change everything.
Go, 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 go. Hold. No. Sit. Sit.
Oh my word. They seem pretty confident, and this is sort of the start of the whole thing.
Ready?
It's all quite literally downhill from here.
Yes. Put it down.
It's been so successful, we've lost them. It's dealing with these rails from the light gauge rails that are used to extract the coal material. It's dealing with the sleepers that go underneath it. It's avoiding the uneven surfaces, and we've already seen a few profiles of the 3D data that it's capturing, so it's immediately giving us meaningful data to collect.
That was difficult, but very successful. It didn't fail at all. I struggled in some cases where the mud was really deep. I mean, we struggled more than the robot, I think. It was good.
It looked
really nice.
It looked really stable. It looks like
It
you
did.
hopefully have
It
got
was really
plenty of
stable,
good
even in
data.
difficult cases. It was just amazing.
What did you make of this then, Mike? What did you
I
first?
think it's definitely a start, and I think, you know, when it's been mining as long as I have, it'll probably be doing the job.
Let's go.
You can't make this stuff up. But what do you make of RoboDog? Let us know in the comments section below. Carenza has been at the centre of excavations with the local community at the historic village of Fulbeck in the 80th anniversary year of Operation Market Garden.
Last summer, Dr. Tim Clack from the University of Oxford and I led excavations on a Lincolnshire site associated with World War II's Operation Market Garden, which planned to accelerate Allied progress across Europe after D-Day by dropping troops far behind enemy lines. In 2024, Digging Market Garden commemorated the 80th anniversary of the Arnhem Campaign as part of South Kesteven District Council's new Soldiers from the Sky project.
So Digging Market Garden, this is the first phase of field work. It's been generously funded by the University of Oxford, and that money is going to really innovative fieldwork, a community archaeology project taking place firstly in Fulbeck at the site of Fulbeck Manor in Lincolnshire.
Digging Market Garden targeted Fulbeck Manor, used during Arnhem Campaign preparations. Owner Julian Fain has distant memories of wartime Nissen huts in the garden, but they aren't shown on wartime maps, which show the camp nearby but not the manor area. Appropriately, given Fulbeck's military history, most of the field workers were current and former military personnel and their families, volunteering through military charitable organisations, Operation Nightingale and Wings to the Past. Early finds from the trenches included ammunition rounds from training and live firing, military kit bag straps and uniform buttons. A solenoid from a 1943-44 military jeep confirmed the presence of an Arnhem-era repair workshop. For the first 2 days, evidence for huts remained elusive, until a 20th century water pipe appeared. The trench extension revealed that the pipe had cut through a lightly built brick wall. This wall looks similar to foundations of 1944 Nissen huts excavated on the Band of Brothers dig at Aldbourne in Wiltshire. Beneath the brick wall was a much earlier stone wall. This stone wall appears to be part of a medieval predecessor of the present manor house, no trace of which has previously been found. Digging Market Garden provided vivid insights into Fullbeck's use in the Arnhem Campaign, and also revealed the medieval antecedent of the house which hosted Arnhem officers and meetings. Volunteers and visitors alike were impressed and intrigued. Digging Market Garden also benefited today's military, with detailed feedback showing a huge range of positive impacts on volunteers' mental well-being as they made new discoveries about the wealth of history buried beneath these now quiet Lincolnshire lawns.
Bodmin Moor is steeped in legend, from smugglers' tales at the Jamaica Inn through to associations with King Arthur. But as modern archaeology often highlights, the truth can be more fascinating and ancient than the myth. A mysterious rectangular monument on the moor has long been romanticised as King Arthur's Hall, no doubt fuelled by other local sites connected with Arthurian legend, from Tintagel Castle to Dosmary Pool. But while Arthur's tales are set at the turn of the 6th century AD, new research has now confirmed the monument's origins are actually thousands of years older, stemming from the Neolithic, around 5,000 years ago. And I'm pleased to have one of the researchers, an old Time Team friend, James Gossett from Cornwall Archaeological Unit, here with me now. Hi James, thanks for joining us.
Hi Dani, good to see you again.
James, you've had a very exciting few weeks with some big news.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, I'm getting the dating results back from King Arthur's Hall has been very exciting, and everyone seems fascinated by the results. So that's really good.
So tell us a bit more about this monument.
Well, King Arthur's Hall is effectively a rectangular bank of earth, although now we put a slice through it. We know it's got a stony core as well. It's about 50 metres long internally, about 20 metres wide, and it has banks up to 11 metres wide. And the inside of that bank is lined with upright stones, orthostats, big pieces of granite. And today there's 56 surviving. Many of them are leaning or have collapsed onto the floor. But some recording done by John Norden back in the 16th century suggests that it might have been a continuous line of stones around the whole interior at one point, maybe up to 140 or 150 of them.
And how did the project come about?
Well, really, it was a conversation between a local group on Bodmin Moor called Time Seekers, and they spoke to someone at Historic England and someone at Cornwall National Landscape because they were spearheading this project called Monumental Improvement, looking at scheduled monuments across Bodmin Moor with funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. They always had a sense that it was a much older monument. And we thought, well, let's see whether we can put a scientific dating project together and find out exactly how old it is and whether it does belong to the prehistoric period or later on.
Excavations were carried out in 2022. The team included Time Team's own 3D reconstruction whiz Matt Bear Clark, who has produced a range of photogrammetry models of the trenches. And you used a relatively new dating technique, optically stimulated luminescence, to date the monument. But did it surprise you to get such an early date?
It did to an extent. Well, I mean, it was. I suppose I'd have been happy with any date. It was just really our objective to find out when it had been constructed. But this team from St Andrews University and Newcastle University, when they came back with these dates for these buried soils, buried under the banks of the monument, proving that it had been built around about 3000 BC. That was a surprise, and just really, made it an even more enigmatic monument because we don't really know what it was built for.
That's an interesting point, because we don't tend to think of rectangular examples from that age. We often think of stone circles in the Neolithic. Various ideas have been put forward about the origins of the monument, including a medieval castle enclosure. Do we have any idea of its original function?
Not really, except that it fits into a time period when we suspect the prehistoric tor enclosures of the earlier Neolithic period are still probably in use in a landscape where there's extensive grazing, and then they're sat in the middle of the moor on a north-south alignment, looking directly what would have been the pole star at the time. Perhaps, lends one to think it might have been some sort of ceremonial space or a place of the coming together of communities who would have also used these tor enclosures for similar sorts of activities, maybe for exchange of goods or ideas, maybe for rituals at certain times of the year, perhaps for the meeting of different communities coming together. We'll never really be completely sure. But maybe there'll be a bit more work there at some point, which will help guide us towards a use for the monument.
Thanks, James. That's great. Please do keep us informed of any developments.
It's a pleasure. Always great to talk about King Arthur's Hall.
A fascinating new chapter for an ancient monument. But what do you think its original function was? Let us know in the comments. And we'll be sharing more insights from James over on Patreon. To find out more about Bob Minmore's prehistoric archaeology, check out the Time Team episode In the Shadow of the Tor from Series 14. And you can also catch an in-depth interview with environmental archaeologist Dr. Ben Geary. Links below. James Gossip of Cornwall Archaeological Unit is no stranger to Time Team. You may remember him as the site director of our first new Time Team dig filmed in 2021.
Welcome to Cornwall and to a new look Time Team.
Together, we investigated Bowden Fugu on the Lizard Peninsula, a type of mysterious Iron Age subterranean structure distinct to this part of West Cornwall, whose exact purpose remains hotly debated. Bowden Fugu is back in the news as the project team, Englih Archaeology Group, have just been nominated for Research Project of the Year at the current Archaeology Awards 2025. Time Team's own Matt Bear Clark has been working with them and returned to Bowden this year to witness an exciting development.
There's a buzz of excitement this morning on the Lizard Peninsula, and I've come along to see what it's all about. Bowden Fugu, near the Helford River, is getting a makeover, giving a sense of how it might have looked back in the Iron Age, over 2,000 years ago.
Well, ever since we excavated when we started excavating in 2003, we found part of this big projecting stone down in the corner at the end of this main passageway, which we suspected was a big fallen rock, subsequently turned into what we thought must have been one of the lintels, the capping stones of the passage. So we thought it'd be a great idea to set off the entrance way into the main passage with that lintel, put it back in place, which is what we've done this morning with the help of Chris and the digger. So it's a bit of gentle reconstruction, really. It now gives us a real sense, I think, of what this entranceway would have looked like into the Fugu. Yeah, it just makes it even more of a special monument, really.
And we've got Bear with us now. Hi Bear, how are you doing?
Hello.
Great to see you. Now, Matt, you were there when the lintel went back in. That must have been a great experience.
We got told it was happening, so we rushed down to Bowden the next morning, and it glided gently back into place and just sat there like it was always supposed to. Well, it was supposed to be there, and it really sets the site off. You really get a sense of the tunnel quality that the Fugu would have had just from the one stone back in place. It does make me wonder where all the others are.
I think they've all been reused on buildings and things, haven't they? Because they're pretty hefty stones, so quite useful for buildings.
There's a few gateposts in the nearby area that match the same building material and size as the lintel. So there is a thought that some of them might be missing stones.
That's another project for someone to do there, isn't it? To track them down. Matt, really lovely to catch up with you. And I look forward to, well, we'll see you on an excavation sometime soon. Englih Archaeology Group is a voluntary group that relies on support to keep going. If you wish to support their stellar work with a donation, please do so by visiting the link below. But what do you think the Fugu was used for? As always, let us know in the comments below. Now, we're able to share some news with you that has remained classified until recent developments. Time Team has joined forces with Cotswold Archaeology and Operation Nightingale to investigate an American B-17 flying fortress that crashed in Thurston, Suffolk in 1944. Cotswold has coordinated the mission with the DPAA, the US government agency tasked with accounting for servicemen and women killed or missing in action overseas. Last week, families of the airmen visited Thurston for a special memorial service on the 80th anniversary of the crash, 19th of July 1944.
On this day, 80 years ago, 10 young Americans took to the air from RAF Nettishall in the Flying Fortress 42-30851, the Little Boy Blue, looking to continue their part in the liberation of Europe from tyranny. A mid-air collision ended the lives of 8 of these men and changed the world of the 2 survivors forever. These fields in Suffolk still hold the traces of that fateful day: broken pieces of airframe, a lost dog tag, shattered fragments of lives. The American government affirms its undertaking to leave no man behind, and so we have all returned to this spot to look for those men who are so much more than names carved onto a cemetery wall.
So the DPA's mission is to provide the fullest possible accounting for the thousands of missing U.S. service members around the world. Our goal is to repatriate where we can the remains of the service members back to their families, and that's a sacred mission for the DPAA. It's a very important mission in the U.S. context to provide answers and closure for the families and the comrades of the fallen.
The accident was at 15,000 feet. His chute opened at 2,500 feet. Quite a fall. It deployed the parachute, and this is a piece of that parachute that kept my father from the wreck here.
This crash in the 1940s is still within living memory for people who live around this area, and also for the family members of the people who were on this aircraft. And so it makes the archaeology have a little bit different of a resonance, because people knew when this crash happened, and they knew the people who were on board this aircraft. And so to be able to bring in US service members and UK service members onto the project, to have them contribute to helping to find answers is, I think it's a valuable and important aspect to these projects.
Look at this.
What have you got there?
Tag.
Oh my God.
Aaron Brinkhurst, that's the co-pilot. Wow. That's incredible.
That's one of our 3. Thanks to this find, we could end up having next of kin notified. So
wow.
That's absolutely incredible.
Amazing.
Absolutely incredible. Well done. Well done on that.
Thank you.
Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his power. Put on the whole armor of God, so that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness.
Time Team has been documenting this story for a special episode presented by Dr. Helen Geek to be released later this year.
But in the Second World War, I'd have been cycling through a very different landscape. The sky would have been filled with enormous American bombers from the 43 air bases around East Anglia. It was the largest air armada in history.
Full details of that documentary to be announced in due course.
With the dedication of this memorial, we've gathered to express our collective gratitude to these men and all the others of the greatest generation. In a personal letter from radio operator Ronald Gray's mother to one of the survivors of the crash, Hal Haggerty, she expressed a hope that one day there might be a service on the field in which he died. Today, we fulfil that wish.
Next up, an incredible discovery found off the coast of Sicily, a complete and well-preserved bronze battering ram dating to around 2,200 years ago to the 3rd century BCE. This deadly weapon, known as a rostrum, would have been mounted on the front of an ancient warship and used to ram enemy ships, causing their ultimate destruction and sinking. One of several similar examples discovered over the years, it's thought that this rostrum is testament to a legendary naval battle fought between ancient Rome and Carthage. The Battle of the Aegates Islands in 241 BCE off the northwest coast of Sicily was a face-off between Rome and Carthage for naval supremacy of the Mediterranean. With Rome winning the battle, it was a decisive action that ended the First Punic War. Events from classical antiquity can feel so distant and steeped in mythology, yet physical finds such as these are tangible evidence of a very real and colourful time in history. The find was announced by Sicily's Superintendents of the Sea via social media. We've put a link to that original post in the box below. Wessex Archaeology have recently released a new online library featuring an array of publications available open source, including many Time Team reports. And we've got Dr. Stuart Eve of Wessex Archaeology with us here to tell us more. Hi Stu, how are you?
Hi Dani, yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How are you doing?
Great, thanks. So tell us about this new archive then.
Sure. So today, I guess I'm very proud to announce that we've just recently launched the Wessex Archaeology Open Library. So it's a digital resource which brings together about over 45 years of archaeological research from undertaken by Wessex Archaeology. So as you know, Wessex are an archaeological charity. We undertake field work and research across the UK, but also internationally. And we create hundreds of reports a year, and we put out all sorts of books and everything. And we wanted to find a way to kind of share all of that with everyone. And so, of course, we thought the best way to do this was to create a digital platform so that we can share that data with as many people as possible. So currently we've got about 75 of our full monographs, including many of our titles which have been out of print. And then I think at the moment we've got about 155 reports or so, but we're adding to those every week. And for Time Team fans, there's quite a few books and reports in there authored by Time Team favourites such as Jackie McKinley and of course Wessex Archaeology's own Phil Harding.
Fantastic! And how can we access it?
Basically, it's pretty easy to access. You just go to www.wessexarchaeologylibrary.org. We've also got a kind of climate-friendly print-on-demand service. So if there's any of those books there that you want to actually have a paper copy of, put in your library at home or whatever, put on your bookshelf, there's an option there too. You just click print on demand and then it will just make one copy for you instead of us doing huge print runs that never get put anywhere.
That sounds great. Thanks, Stu.
Yeah, great. And well, see you soon, hopefully.
Yes, see you on an excavation soon. Ancient stone carvings of pharaohs and hieroglyphs have been discovered submerged underwater in the River Nile near Aswan in Egypt. The carvings include depictions of the pharaohs Amenhotep III and Thutmose IV, who ruled during the 14th century BCE. Aswan in southern Egypt is known for its huge granite quarries, the source of stone for many ancient monuments, including the pink granite that adorns the Pantheon in Rome. These newly discovered monuments would originally have been above the waterline, but the area was intentionally flooded when a dam was constructed between 1960 and 1970. Efforts were made by UNESCO at the time to preserve and record archaeology before the flooding. Huge monuments were moved to new sites and reassembled, including the colossal statues of Ramses the Great at the Temple of Abu Simbel. However, some structures and artefacts remained in situ as construction began, and this new project, a French-Egyptian collaboration, is now using a range of modern techniques to locate and record more of this submerged archaeology. The latest discoveries were announced in a statement from the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. It's early days yet, but we look forward to more details. Last month, we discussed a big story to hit the global headlines, a possible Scottish origin for the altar stone at Stonehenge. Well, since then, a new report has been published in the Journal of Archaeological Science that rules out mainland Orkney as a possible source. The new report's authors carried out extensive tests on the standing stones from the Ring of Brodgar, the stones of Stoness and field samples from mainland Orkney, as well as the altar stone from Stonehenge. But when compared, the altar stone didn't match. The report concludes that the Stonehenge altar stone wasn't sourced from mainland Orkney, so the search for its origins continues. And we've put the links to both journal articles below. Now, if you happen to be taking a stroll along a beach one morning, you might find the odd bit of driftwood. But earlier this year, residents on the island of Sanday, Orkney, stumbled across the remains of a shipwreck that might be up to 400 years old. The wooden section of hull was revealed in the sand, sparking a rapid rescue mission to save it before it was taken away by the tide.
It's a very, very large bit of ship. It was 8 by 5 metres when we first found it on the beach. And this whole thing has been this extraordinary journey of discovery, really, and a rescue operation at the same time.
The collaborative effort has seen local residents join forces with Wessex Archaeology and Orkney Islands Council to protect the wreck.
It's the islanders, it's the Heritage Centre volunteers that have valiantly, really valiantly kept it soaked all summer long. They've kept it, they've been unwrapping it, soaking it again.
Well, basically it's been a case of trying to keep it wet. When we first got it to the Heritage Centre, we raided the reuse shop and grabbed any duvet covers, curtains, any fabrics we could and soaked them all in water and wrapped up everything that was movable. And every week or 10 days we had to try and get the cover back and hose it all down just to keep it wet and check that it was all okay.
And now, thanks to the National Heritage Memorial Fund, a dedicated tank has been constructed to help conserve the timbers for future study.
We're so pleased to get this tank because it's going to save that job over winter, and we won't be constantly checking the weather forecast trying to find out when there's going to be a fit day to try and water the wreck, as we called it.
So the fantastic tank behind us has been built by Waterfront Group in Kirkwall. It's made out of stainless steel, 7 metres by 5 metres long, and that should allow us to keep all of the timbers nice and wet, nice and cool, and submerged beneath water, and not have to pile them too much on top of each other, which will keep them nice and safe as well. So the idea is that they're kept in fresh water, which will start the desalination process, which is important. It's the first sort of part of the conservation process.
I think what people really want to know is everyone's more intrigued as to what the boat might be, where it's from and how old it is.
So what is this bit of ship? The answer is we don't really know. We know it's old, we know it's very old. The kind of analysis is pointing us in the direction of 17th century, which is very exciting, the 1600s. If it does turn out to be from that period, then there's only 9 recorded shipwrecks in Scottish waters from that period, so that makes it extremely unusual. It's a really robustly built ship. It's built of oak. It's really solid. It's really strong. So that's pointing us in the direction of, something more than just a kind of coastal trader. So it's really, really exciting. It's a hugely important find.
And I'm joined by Nick Hewitt from Orkney Islands Council. Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
Hi, Dani. Hi, Dani. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Now, this is a fantastic project. What kind of research will you carry out to find out more about the ship?
We're on the start of a long journey, Dani. It's such an exciting object, and we love it. It's thrilling to see it in reality. It's so huge and there's so much detail. The first stage is we have applications out for funding to support further analysis of the timber, including dendrochronological analysis, which will allow us to really firm up on when the ship is from and where it's from. And we're also looking at more work on the kind of construction methodology, which should also give us some clues. There's lots of really informed speculation. You know, we're hardening towards it being 17th century. We're hardening towards it being Dutch. Warships and merchant ships were kind of interchangeable in that period. So, you know, could it be something like the Dutch East India Company, the VOC? That's certainly something we were talking about a lot on the day. So there's a lot to learn.
I'm just wondering, what kind of archival research can you do that might help lead you to find out more about it?
Well, I mean, we're going to start with our own. So we've got a wealth of information in Orkney archives, and if we're able through the analysis to prove that Dutch connection, I suspect there'll be some journeys we want to go down around what records might exist in the Netherlands. So lots of archival work to do, lots more work on the timbers. We're kind of pretty sure that the ship was uncovered on the beach by the storm and not washed in. So there's also the tantalizing possibility about, is there more ship down there, you know, and is it the same ship? A lot of houses in Orkney generally, actually, but specifically in Sandy, have ship's timbers built into them. So, you know, ideally in the future, we'd love to be able to do some work there to see whether anybody has parts of this ship propping up the windows. There's a huge amount of work to do. It's tremendously exciting. And obviously the end goal that I think we'd all love to see, but it is the island's choice, is to have that, you know, amazing structure reassembled and on display to the public.
That's one of the things that I was just going to ask about, because the community have been really involved from the very beginning. What role do you see them playing in the future?
They'll be at the centre of it. It will be the community's project, but they'll be absolutely at the heart of anything we do there. We wouldn't have a ship without the community. The community got it off the beach just at the point where the weather was starting to break up the remains a little bit. So, you know, it's the community that kept it wrapped in old rags and soaked all the way through the summer until we got the tank built. So the community have been amazing, and it will be their project, and we won't really, our job is to help them deliver their dreams with it, really.
Well, it's a great project and we'd love to follow it. Will you keep us informed of the progress?
100%, Dani. We'd love to bring you with us all the way, and maybe get some of you guys up to have a look at it at some point. That would be fantastic.
Oh, well, that'd be brilliant. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Nick. What an amazing effort from everyone involved. I look forward to finding out more about this mysterious shipwreck in the future.
Join a thriving worldwide community of Time Team fans on Patreon.
Our new target is to reach 15,000 worldwide supporters on Patreon by the end of 2025. This will enable us to continue expanding the Time Team world with more digs and greater access than ever before.
Now, a favourite story of mine recently in the headlines. An ancient monument discovered in Thomas Hardy's garden has been granted protected status. The British literary great Thomas Hardy is best known for his classic novels, including Far from the Madding Crowd, Jude the Obscure and Tess of the D'Urbervilles. But as fans of Hardy's novels will know, he held a lifelong fascination with archaeology. He even set the end of Tess of the D'Urbervilles at Stonehenge. In 1891, a sarsen stone was discovered in the grounds of Hardy's house, which he featured in his poem The Shadow on the Stone. Around 100 years later, another sarsen was discovered during excavations, which was part of a Neolithic enclosure almost 100 metres in diameter. In 2022, excavations confirmed that the site was in use during the early Neolithic period, dating the site from around 5,500 to almost 6,000 years ago, making it one of the earliest archaeological sites in Dorset. Thanks in part to the work Hardy carried out over a century ago, the site has now been protected as a scheduled ancient monument. Hardy's house Max Gate is open to visitors via the National Trust, and both sarsens are still on display in the garden. Hannah Jefferson of the National Trust has said, "We've no doubt Hardy would approve wholeheartedly with the scheduling of this ancient monument, and we're delighted that we can share with visitors the true significance of his discoveries here." It's just a short distance from the Neolithic Henge Malmesbury Rings and Maiden Castle, one of the largest Iron Age hill forts in Europe, both of which are well worth a visit. Remaining in Dorset now, and the National Trust's Corfe Castle has been in the headlines this month with news of a specially constructed vantage point within the ruins of the castle known as the King's Tower, offering amazing views of the surrounding countryside. You might recognise Corfe Castle as the backdrop of Time Team's recent dig, The Secrets of Witch Farm. The castle originates from the Norman conquest, and the keep, or King's Tower, was built for William the Conqueror's son Henry I around AD 1107. The platform has been built to help raise funds for a major conservation project, which will involve specialist masons working from ropes and scaffolding, using similar techniques and materials to their predecessors 1,000 years ago. The incredible view from this perspective hasn't been witnessed since the castle was intentionally slighted during the English Civil War. The new viewing platform is a temporary structure and it'll only remain in place for a year, so make sure you plan a visit while you can. Now for one of my favourite finds of the year. For many field archaeologists, their most treasured possession is their trusty spade. So imagine the delight when archaeologists recently discovered what might just be one of the oldest wooden spades in Britain. This remarkable artefact is thousands of years old, likely dating from the Middle Bronze Age. The discovery was made at Arne near Poole Harbour in Dorset during evaluations ahead of the Moors at Arne project, which is transforming the area into a designated wetland. Thankfully, the cameras were on hand to capture it all.
The call about the wooden spade, it made me sit back in my chair and go, wow, that's amazing. I also felt a bit jealous actually, because I wish I'd been on site that day when they found it.
The excavation has been carried out by Wessex Archaeology, with the project delivered by Kier on behalf of the Environment Agency and its project partners, RSPB and Natural England.
What have you found? Waterlogged timber.
First I wasn't 100% sure what I was looking at, because I was just taking out a second fill in the ring ditch that we were excavating at the time. And then I came across some wood and I stopped, thought for a moment, what's this? And together we uncovered what turned out to be a wooden spade.
That's pretty decent, didn't expect that.
The waterlogged conditions perfectly preserved this tool, which was fashioned from a single piece of wood.
I was quite nervous, but luckily I did have some amazing colleagues with me to help me move the spade onto the board be used as a transportation.
Success!
Because it's wood, it's very vulnerable, so as soon as it's exposed to oxygen, it will start to decay. So it's been taken back to Wessex Archaeology's offices, and it's going to be conserved and consolidated. But we're also going to investigate it, we're going to analyse it to try and find out what wood it's made from, and most importantly, what date it is.
So this is the wooden spade from Arne Moor. When it first came in, Erica and I were cleaning it, just using soft sponges and tap water just to remove most of the surface soil, and using bamboo skewers where the surface soil was a bit tougher. When we're working on an artifact like this, we have to make sure that it doesn't dry out, because drying out will cause it to shrink and the wood will warp and change shape, and you might lose important information like tool marks and things like that.
There are some wood species which are relatively easy to identify just by eye or maybe with a magnifying lens. But the normal procedure for identifying waterlogged wood such as this from any archaeological site involves taking very, very thin sections through the wood and using the light on the microscope to shine a bright light through it, and then that will illuminate the wood anatomy. So we know it's made from a mature piece of oak, most likely from the heartwood, which is the dense wood from near the centre of the tree. We know this because there are balloon-like deposits which we can see in the wood anatomy. And these little balloon-like deposits are only formed in very mature oak trees. So the first radiocarbon date we've obtained It calibrates to the Middle Bronze Age, so roughly between 1500 BC to 1400 BC. It's probably going to be a unique experience in my working career to work on something like this. And I really look forward to seeing what the post-excavation process unravels.
It's the sort of thing that as an archaeologist you very rarely find in your working career. So it's something that they'll remember and I'll remember for a long, long time.
Earlier this year, we dropped in on archaeology students from the University of Leicester at their field school, excavating a Roman villa in Leicestershire. The students got stuck in, honing a range of skills from trolling techniques and recording to finds processing and identification. We're now joining them again, this time back in the lab, to find out what happens next in the post-excavation process.
So Jeremy, it's been 6 months since that field work on our Roman villa complex, and today we're going to work with the students on updating them on the post-ex process.
Yeah, that's right. We've completed the excavations, we've had a chance to start looking at the finds and other materials and to review the evidence that we discovered.
We think the students did a really good job of unpicking all this information.
They did a great job because they've only got a comparatively short period of time to do the excavation. We asked them to look at 4 different areas and they excavated the lot, and particularly working in the area of the villa buildings themselves, there was a lot of material to remove in order for us to really unpick that building.
And in your fieldwork module, they've continued to work on the post-excavation side of things, haven't they?
That's right. I mean, we're very keen that the students don't see excavation in isolation, that they understand the whole process of what happens to the material they excavate and get to interpret what they found. So what we're working on in the module is taking them through all the records we made on site so they can reconstruct the sequence of events and look at the finds and think about how we date activity and what the finds can tell us from the basis of what they themselves have dug.
Yeah, and in that session that we're having today, they're going to be looking at, in some detail, at the pottery evidence and some of the wall plaster from the site, aren't they?
Yes, we've got a range of material for them to look at, and what we want to do is take them through thinking about how we look at the pottery and other material, how that can help us to date activity, but what other things it might tell us about the nature of life on the site.
As well as identifying pottery and other small finds, the students have been having a go at using the flotation tank.
Thank you very much, Will. It's been a pleasure to have a chance to try out some of the post-excavation stuff with you, as well as the excavation stuff. I still think I prefer the excavation stuff, but it's been a pleasure nonetheless.
Thank you. It's been great to have you down here.
And we'll be sharing the full story of that dig in 2025. World news now, 1,000-year-old statues have been discovered in a palace in Cambodia. The Grand Royal Palace at Angkor Thom was once home to the powerful Khmer Empire that ruled over huge swathes of land across Southeast Asia from the 9th to the 15th centuries AD. At its height, Angkor was a huge, bustling city, one of the largest of its time, serviced by an advanced irrigation system. Today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Whilst excavating at the North Gate, archaeologists discovered 12 beautifully carved sandstone statues known as door guardians, many of them almost intact. The beautifully detailed carvings are thought to date from the 11th century, based on stylistic features consistent with the palace. The sophistication of stone masonry, which is said to exemplify the Kniang style, speaks to the high status of the complex. The discovery was announced by the APSARA National Authority and the China-Cambodia government team for safeguarding Angkor. We've put the link in the box below. If you're craving even more archaeology each month, then you must catch up with the latest Time Team podcast. There's a new episode every fortnight, and I caught up with presenters Helen and Martin to find out what you can expect. I've got Martin and Helen here with me from the Time Team podcast. Hi guys, how are you doing? All right?
Yes, thanks, fine, thank you. We're doing very well.
Excellent. Can you tell us a bit more about the podcast then? What is it all about?
Well, Martin is a proper radio professional
And I'm obviously not.
You're an archaeology professional.
So we've teamed up to make a Time Team podcast, which is, now there were 4 elements, weren't there? One is news about things. So we'll be parasiting on you and finding out what the news is. So that's news of all around the world and everywhere, like you do. One is...
We're going to be finding out more about techniques used to create archaeology. So that could be troweling, it could be going out with Stuart to find out how a landscape archaeologist might discover the secrets of a landscape. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be asking you questions. So if you've got any archaeology related questions that you've always wanted to ask, but you think, oh, maybe that's a bit stupid, maybe, is that a silly question? It's not a silly question, and Helen is very willing to answer it. And plus, we've got the Time Team nostalgia. So everything you wanted to know about Time Team.
Yeah, so that's kind of, Martin calls it nostalgia, I call it history. So it's how Time Team came to be. I mean, it's a long time ago now. It's Time Team began.
Years.
Yeah, quite. So some people might like to know how it began, how people got involved, how it grew into this enormous behemoth, which is not a moth.
Behemoth?
Yeah, that's Phil Harding and John Gator, of course, they're the behemoths. Yeah, so it's quite varied, isn't it, Martin?
It is, it's varied. It gives you a snapshot into a world of archaeology, which if you've never come across archaeology before, is hopefully really accessible. And it's good fun as well, we have a laugh.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's once a fortnight.
And you can get it anywhere you normally get your podcasts, so Spotify, Apple, anything you like, go and find it.
Fantastic, brilliant stuff. Well, I look forward to listening to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I've often said on this show, some of the best discoveries are often made during post-excavation analysis, and here's a great example. The team at Bournemouth University's Archaeological unit made a surprise discovery when analysing artefacts from the collection at Hengistbury Head near Christchurch in Dorset. Detail from X-ray scans revealed that a metal object, once classified as a currency bar, is in fact an Iron Age saw blade, complete with teeth. I'm joined by Meg Russell from Bournemouth University. Hi, Meg.
Hi, Dani, you all right?
I'm good, thanks. Tell us what you guys have been up to.
This project came about because the curator at the Hengistbury Head Visitor Centre, Hayden Scott Pratt, came to us, myself, Dr. Heather Tamminen and Will Odling from Bournemouth University, to start to look at their collection at Hengistbury Head. This archive contains all of the different artefacts from many different excavations over the last few decades. And we thought we would start with the metalwork. The majority of the metalwork comes from the Iron Age settlement, and it corrodes in the ground in situ, but it also corrodes once it's excavated and it's put in the archive because it oxidizes with the air and with water. It blooms around the artifact, and this can then hide the ID. So it can be really difficult to identify what these artifacts even are. And so what we need to do is be able to look at these artifacts and decide what is this? What are we looking at? And what do we need to preserve this artifact? But the other key part was X-raying, because it's non-destructive, it's quick, it's cost-effective once you have the right equipment, but it's infrequently used as part of the post-excavation process still. One artifact, though, that we always knew we were going to do on its own was the so-called currency bar from the Iron Age settlement. And currency bars are long, flat objects. They often taper off at one end, and they're often seen in southern Britain in the Iron Age, in mid to late Iron Age, actually. We call them currency bars because there's a reference to by Caesar in Gallic Wars that says that people in Britain were using iron bars as currency. And that's essentially the only reason why we call them that. Once we x-rayed them, there is a nice flat edge that we expected. And then when you look at the top edge, we saw something really interesting, and that was a series of really evenly spaced serrated teeth. And so looking at it, we think we found an Iron Age saw, but they don't exist in the same quantity as axes and chisels and other woodworking tools in this toolkit. It might be because they're very thin, so they don't survive very well. It might be because they maybe break, so they are often reused and recast into something else. But it might also be that a lot of the artifacts we are calling currency bars might not actually be currency bars. Maybe there's more soils in the Iron Age than we thought.
Did you have suspicions that the currency bar might not be a currency bar before you x-rayed it?
Do you know what? We never thought it would be anything else. You just take what people say for granted, and there are so many examples of this in archaeology. It gets called something once by one archaeologist and we just run with it. We never anticipated this to be anything different. We thought we might be able to see, okay, how was this cast? Has it been hammered? Why maybe is it manufactured in this way at the end? And so that's where we started, at the tanged end, and then just looking upwards. And like I said, it really, really poses the question of how many currency bars are really currency bars.
Does it feel daunting to be challenging an earlier identification with a new interpretation?
It's so daunting to challenge opinions, especially when they are maybe long-standing opinions or by quite important people. But that's why we need to start that conversation, because there are so many things we just take for granted in archaeology, often in prehistory in Britain, because there are so many gods of archaeology that we just take for their word as gospel. And so it is so important to be brave enough to say, actually, I think this is maybe wrong, because it's not the only example. And I think over the next few years, there are going to be many more examples of things like this happening.
Congratulations on your discovery, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dani.
Englih Heritage have announced the discovery of a knife handle near Hadrian's Wall, depicting a Roman gladiator, complete with helmet, sword and shield. The knife handle, found in a river at Corbridge Roman town, Northumberland, has been cast in copper alloy and represents a type of gladiator known as a secutor. At the time of its construction, Hadrian's Wall marked the northernmost border of the Roman Empire. While gladiators are symbolic of ancient Rome, this is just one of a few depictions of the sport discovered in the UK. Dr. Francis McIntosh of Englih Heritage says, "It's rare to find a piece of gladiator memorabilia in Britain, and to find such a well-preserved and interesting piece is particularly remarkable." As Francis notes, gladiators were the celebrities of their day. She says this beautifully made knife handle is testament to how pervasive this celebrity culture was, reaching all the way to Hadrian's Wall at the very edge of the Roman Empire. The knife is to go on display at Corbridge Roman town in 2025. I caught up with Time Team's Professor Henry Chapman about his latest research on bog bodies, human bodies preserved in peat bogs across Northern Europe. This item contains images of bog bodies, so some people may want to skip to the next news section. These peat wetland environments provide perfect conditions for preservation, and as peat is a traditional source of fuel, many of the bodies have been discovered by chance over the years by peat cutters. Typically from the Iron Age, many bog bodies are concentrated in Denmark, like the famous Tollen Man and Elling Woman from the Jutland Peninsula, but notable examples have also been found across the UK and Ireland. Various theories have been put forward as to why they were deposited in bogs, ranging from executions to high-ranking and perhaps even willing sacrificial victims. Henry's research has taken a new approach to shed light on these mysterious burials.
People have always looked at the body itself. You know, the last meal's often preserved, the injuries and all that. But nobody's really looked at the landscape context. And what I mean by that is where in the bog was it at the time? You know, was it on the edge? Was it in the middle? You know, what's the bog like? Was it really hard to get across? Was it open with very few trees, or was it hidden? You know, because all these things, I think, help us answer that question. So been looking at a variety of bogs in the UK and in Denmark, where bog bodies have been found, and trying to assess those landscapes. Now, quite often there's not much peat in these areas. We might find bits to sample, and from that we can, it's the environmental archaeology, it's reconstructing past environments.
Henry's research has identified key differences between UK and Danish bog bodies, highlighting that the circumstances of death can't all be treated the same with sweeping conclusions.
Well, we're finding that in England, for example, is very, very different to Denmark. Yeah, in England, so for example, Linde Man, he's in the British Museum. He was placed in possibly the hardest to get to location you can get on that bog, in atrocious conditions when the bog was really wet in a very open landscape, so it's probably killed in a very flamboyant sort of theatrical way. It would have been very visible, but he had to have walked where he died. They couldn't have carried a body, it's too dangerous. So all of that happened in a very theatrical sense in the middle of the bog where he was placed. In contrast, the Danish examples are much more frequently associated with what had been previously economic landscapes, so where people have been peat cutting in the Iron Age. And they at that point they're digging peat in pits. So if you imagine these pits, the size of these pits are kind of how much you could dig in a day. Okay. Because they fill in with water overnight and then you can't dig them. So they're that sort of size. And what seems to happen in Denmark is that they have these economic landscapes where they've got lots of these peat cuttings. And then they sort of infill and they sort of get left for a while, maybe a few years. And then they're revisited. But that's the places where they're then placing bodies into them, killing them and then place them into these peat cuttings. So very, very different to the English examples. And I think that's a really big headline.
And bodies aren't the only items to be discovered in peat bogs of Northern Europe. Other deliberately placed deposits have been found, including dismantled chariots and the magnificent Gunstrup cauldron.
I think the most important thing is actually the importance of specific bogs. So I think they, for a long time we've been thinking about bog bodies as a general thing or as individuals, but actually I think if you look at it as a particular bog and understand how that bog worked with communities and what's happening in that area, not stopping at the wetland edge but thinking about what's happening in the drylands, looking at that relationship through time seems to be the key to understanding a lot of what's happening. It's not just telling us about the bog bodies, it's telling us about those societies in a much, much richer way.
To find out more about Henry's research, we've put a link to his various publications below. And my full extended chat with Henry will be going up on Patreon. Nazca in Peru is known for its giant geoglyphs running across the landscape, known as the Nazca lines. The intricate, stylised geoglyphs are created by removing surface rocks to reveal a lighter subsoil beneath. Many are abstract geometric shapes, while others depict a range of animals from birds to monkeys and marine animals, as well as human-like figures. Although created thousands of years ago, they're best seen from the air and were only rediscovered and recognised as figures within the last century since the advent of flight. Now, machine learning has been utilised to help identify many more examples. Another 300 geoglyphs have been discovered as a result of the new research, almost doubling the amount known. The latest examples are thought to be around 2,000 years old, again depicting creatures including orca and humans. While AI played a critical role, it should be noted that the project depended on the expertise of archaeologists and researchers on the ground, who put in thousands of work hours coordinating the project and ground truthing in the field. The study was led by a team from Yamagata University, Japan, and published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. As usual, we've put the link in the description box below. Operation Nightingale's return to Oldbourne in Wiltshire for Digging Band of Brothers 2024 culminated in the discovery of a dog tag, the third now found on site to have belonged to an American paratrooper from World War II. The dog tag, traced to Otto May of Fox Company, was found folded up and possibly discarded between the floorboards of one of the Nissen huts. Giselle Corrali of Operation Nightingale did some further research and unearthed an even greater find: Otto's grandchildren, Brian and Greg May. And it turned out they'd been doing some research of their own.
Brian and I we're certainly not historians, we didn't study it in school or anything, but from a very young age, we've taken interest and, would ask our grandfather questions and then, have read every book we could get our hands on, have researched every part of Fox Company of all of the 101st. And so it's almost, it's a cool match because it just so happens, we've read every damn book and found every, every article we could dig up and every picture.
This is right when Band of Brothers just came out, the book. That Christmas when my grandparents came over, I said, Grandpa, look at this. Gave him the book. And I said, I hear it's a really good book. He starts flipping through. He's like, oh, Colonel Sink. and then a couple other names which didn't mean anything to me at the time. And I said to him, I said, I hear it's a really good book. And he's like, yep, he's like, it's going to be a good book. I was there.
Otto was one of the original recruits from Camp Takoa. He jumped on D-Day and was injured from artillery fire while positioned in a foxhole during the siege of Bastogne. Amazingly, Greg and Brian had a few items of Otto's of their own to share.
I've got a pair of skivvies. I've got a t-shirt. This is like and I've got the necktie that goes with this, but this is the,
no.
you see it?
Oh my God, no way.
So this is like the dress shirt that they wore around, like when you see them in Band of Brothers in Aldbourne. And this patch, so you've got the Screaming Eagle and I guess the Sergeant or Corporal bars, I'm not even sure which.
Sergeant's bars there, yeah.
Here's like the overcoat, which basically has the same stuff. It's got the bars, the Screaming Eagle.
It's a heartwarming story showing how archaeology can have such an immediate resonance for the living.
The past year, I've been a little frustrated because I kind of hit my research wall. So it was I felt like I was there's nothing else I can do. They're not writing new books, all those guys are moving on, So getting the Facebook message, it was almost like, holy cow, it's opening up a new, now we can start researching more and start trying to learn more and piece together more, so.
And as a direct result of the dog tag's discovery, Richard has vowed to return to the site for further investigation.
It changes my decisions about where we're going to dig, because there won't be any more huts being dug, but we now have to, because there could be another tag potentially. And we talk about archaeology, each object has a narrative and a story about it, and they do, but the embedded story in that dog tag is just something else. It's amazing.
We shared that full interview with Patreon members, and due to the overwhelming response, we've now unlocked that post, making it available to the wider public for free. So head over to Patreon right now to watch that extended interview, where you'll also find a whole host of additional content, including Q&As, masterclasses and Dig Watch coverage. And finally, it was only a matter of time, but an emerging field of scientific study is the archaeology of space. Many artefacts have been left on the moon from the various missions over the years, and with the prospect of several separate lunar missions in development and astronauts returning to the moon, the possibility of investigating 50-year-old space junk is growing ever more likely. Elsewhere, archaeological principles are now being applied in the International Space Station, taking the concept of a test pit, or a shovel test pit as often referred to in the States. Investigators are studying how the use of 6 designated areas on board the station have evolved over time. The research demonstrates that the study of how humans interact with and adapt to their environment can be applied anywhere, whether that's a muddy field in Britain or orbiting thousands of miles above the Earth. According to the researchers, by applying a very traditional method for sampling a site to a completely new kind of archaeological context, we show how the ISS crew uses different areas of the space station in ways that diverge from designs and mission plans. The results have been published in the scientific journal PLOS ONE, and we've put the link in the description box below. Well, that's it for this month. Additional content from Time Team News can be found over on our Patreon channel, including 3D models and extended interviews. And please do remember to subscribe and press the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.
Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses and behind-the-scenes insights.